Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for a super special video. Today we are breaking down Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, wrapping up the big event this weekend, so we have a ton to talk about. The plan for this video is basically to go over a few big picture topics that came out of Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, and then at the end of the video we'll jump into some sweet decks, some spicy decks, some sweet cards, and kind of talk about the actual decks that showed up and performed well. So we got a lot of ground to cover, tons of information and thoughts from the Pro Tour this weekend. So let's jump right into it. And we're going to start off with the biggest takeaway from Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, and that is the pros definitely did not break the format. Modern is modern. It is the modern we know and love. The pros heading into the Pro Tour, there was some rumblings, oh, we can break it, we're going to ruin modern with this Pro Tour. That ended up being kind of laughable in hindsight. The format was incredibly diverse, with 7 different decks in the top 8, 30 different decks posting winning records, no deck making up more than 9.3% of the day 1 metagame. So basically, the pros did not figure it out. They did not break the format. There was no dominant deck. Instead, there's tons of reasonable playable decks, and that's basically what we've thought Modern is. That is the same thing we've been saying about Modern for a long time. Pick a deck you like, pick a deck you enjoy, practice it like crazy, and you can have success with it. And that is exactly what we saw going on the Pro Tour stage. We saw Abzan Master Reed Duke making the top 8 on a weekend where Abzan was really, really bad. One of the worst decks of the tournament, but Reed Duke, really good with Abzan, always plays Abzan, and was able to take it to a top 8. We saw Jerry Thompson with Mardu Pyromancer, another deck that, from a broad big picture perspective, was pretty poor at the tournament, but in the top 8 because he likes that deck, he plays that deck, he knows that deck. So that's the takeaway. Modern is what we thought it was. There's nothing here saying the format's broken, saying we should change our thoughts and techniques on Modern. Play a deck you like, practice it like crazy, and you'll be able to have success with it. So that's number 1. Format very unbroken heading out of the Pro Tour, while there was some rumblings that it could be heading into the Pro Tour. Number 2 on our list, and this kind of relates to number 1, no best deck. There is quite literally no best deck in Modern. If you dig into the numbers, there is no deck that, oh my god, it put up such a great finish. Maybe it didn't even make the top 8, but it just, by the metrics, it was super good. Instead, I was writing the By the Number article for the Pro Tour, and there's like a million decks that are okay. And that's where Modern is. You have a whole bunch of decks that you're like, okay, that performed about like average, but it didn't do anything crazy. So like we were talking about a minute ago, you can really play one of 30 or maybe even more than 30 decks and expect to have success even at the Pro Tour level. So the format is super diverse. There's no single deck that stands out at the top of the format. As I mentioned before, 7 different decks in the top 8, 30 different decks posting winning records, no deck with more than 9.3% of the meta. So play what you want and you can have success with it. As a result, kind of tying into our first 2 topics, we have a ban and restricted announcement coming up a week from tomorrow, and heading into the Pro Tour, there was a very real concern that we might need bannings. Death Shadow, people always complain about, rumble about. Tron, what if it dominated the format? Storm, Wizards already likes to ban Storm. So heading into the event, there was a really realistic shot that there would be bannings in Modern. Heading out of the Pro Tour, that seems significantly less likely. And it seems very, very, very unlikely that anything is going to be banned in Modern. So here's what I'm thinking, is that probably we will have a no banning announcement. However, there is a couple of exceptions. One is Lantern Control, really good, all over the top 8, and it feels like it could be the kind of deck that Wizards would give the egg banning to. So Eggs wasn't dominant, but it was really slow, it was super boring to play against, people complained a lot about the deck, and it finally made it to the top of a Pro Tour, and Wizards ended up banning it. So I could see an argument that Wizards would ban something from Lantern, not because the deck is necessarily too good, but just because they don't like the play style of Lantern. A more interesting possibility is if we do get a no banning banning announcement, it's possible that Wizards tries unbanning something. And I was excited about this before the Pro Tour, but after seeing these results and the incredible diversity, I'm actually a little nervous. I think Bloodbraid Elf would be safe. I think Stoneforge would be safe. I don't think Jace would be safe, but I could imagine Wizards trying to unban those cards, but the format is in such an amazing, diverse place right now that I don't even know if it's worth risking an unbanning at this point, because the format is just so incredibly amazing, and the Pro Tour just backed up everything that people love about Modern, the diversity, the ability to play any deck and compete with it and win with it. So I don't know if it's worth shaking things up right now, because the Modern format is in such a staggeringly amazing place. So those are kind of the big three takeaways. I also wanted to mention one other thing sort of connected to the banning. So we got a few spoilers during Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan from 25th Anniversary Masters. We saw Jason Mind Sculptor coming back, Azusa Lost Seeking coming back, Phyrexian Obliterator also coming back. So if you want to go tinfoil hat theory, if Wizards ever was thinking of unbanning Jason Modern, they would need to do that connected with a reprinting, because prices would be absurdly high if Wizards just unban Jace and it wasn't reprinted immediately. So if there was ever a time when Wizards might try to unban Jace, they could unban it now. They have a reprint coming in a month. It would sell 25th Anniversary Masters like crazy if that's part of their goal. So maybe that's tinfoil hat conspiracy theory thinking, but I think there is some very slight chance that all these pieces of the puzzle with the reprinting and the Pro Tour and the Talk of Modern unbannings could align the stars in such a way that Wizards is like, all right, whatever, we're going to try it. Let's unban Jace, see what happens, sell a ton of 25th Anniversary Masters. Worst case, we sell a ton of 25th Anniversary Masters, and we ban Jace again 6 months from now because it's way too good. So keep that in mind as a potential dark horse. I don't think Jace is safe. I used to think Jace might be safe, but I'm less convinced that Jace would be safe in Modern. Plus, Modern's in a great place, so I don't really want to risk it right now. But I think there's a chance, a slim chance, that Wizards is like, all right, whatever, let's try this and see what happens. All right, let's transition forward, move out from the big picture stuff and into the specifics. We're going to talk about some decks. So what we have now is the 3 best decks from Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, then the 3 worst decks from Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, and then we'll wrap things up today with just my 3 favorite decks, the 3 spiciest decks, favorite decks, whatever. So let's start off with the 3 best decks, the 3 biggest winners from Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan. And coming in at number 3 on our list, we have 5-Color Humans. So 5-Color Humans is a winner in a whole bunch of ways. First off, it was the most played deck at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, which is already a win for the archetype. But then it backed that up by posting solid numbers across the board, converting players to day 2, posting high-end finishes, and it was the only deck to put 2 players into the top 8. So expect that 5-Color Humans is here to stay. The meteoric rise in just a few months' time from Kitesail Freebooter being printed in Ixalan to being one of the best decks at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan. Coming in at number 2 on our list, we have Traverse Shadow. So the story of Death Shadow at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan is actually pretty interesting. The most popular build of Death Shadow was Grixis Death Shadow, which makes sense. That deck has been really popular for a while now. However, the best build of Death Shadow, and one of the best performing decks, period, albeit with a small sample size, was the Traverse build of Death Shadow, where you're kind of going into multiple colors. You have access to Tarmogoyf. Traverse the Uvenwald can find your Death Shadows, can find the pieces you need, your one-ofs like Snapcaster and Grimflare. So it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. While Grixis is still kind of the default, for players that dig behind the numbers a little bit, they're going to realize that Traverse Shadow was actually by far the best Death Shadow build at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan. Coming in at number 1 on our list, we have a deck that not only was the best deck at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, but one of my favorites, maybe my favorite of the bunch, Black Red Hollow One. So the deck started off with, I believe, 7 players, and every single one of them made 2. A lot of those players posted high high-end finishes. It got into the top 8, made it all the way to the semifinals before finally losing. So this was the breakout paper performance for the deck. The deck had been floating around on Magic Online. We played a budget version of it, the Mono Red Hollow One deck, but this is the breakout. So be ready. Hollow One is going to be on the rise over the coming weeks after just a very hyped, very awesome, exciting, fun performance at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan. So let's transition from our best decks into the most disappointing, the 3 worst decks at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan. So, coming in at number 3 on our worst deck list, we have Boggles. And in defense of Boggles, only 8 players started out with the deck, so it is the least heavily played of any of the decks that make our worst of list. But the fact remains, of those 8 players, only 2 of them made it into day 2, so it was just a pretty disappointing weekend overall for Boggles, and that kind of makes me happy, because Boggles is not only on the worst deck list, but also on my most hated modern deck list, so it's kind of nice to see it not do well. Maybe the biggest surprise is number 2 on our worst deck list, and that is Titan Shift / Titan Breach. So basically, Primeval Titan decks were the worst decks at the entire Pro Tour. They came in converting only about 30% of their players to day 2 with both builds. So it wasn't like one build was better than the other. They were both just not good, which is pretty shocking because Titan Shift and Titan Breach have been near the top of the modern format heading into the event. But they put up absolutely horrible performances at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, bringing them in number 2 on our worst deck list. And coming in at the very top, number 1 on our worst deck list, we have another surprise, and that is Storm. So, you know Storm is not in a good place when even John Finkel doesn't play it, because John Finkel always plays Storm. He was on Tron this weekend, and the numbers basically back that up. Out of the 9 decks at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan that made up at least 5% of the day 1 meta, Storm was the worst performing. So out of the heavily played decks, it was by far the worst by essentially every metric you can look at. So heading into the weekend, there was discussions of whether Storm would be bannable, would it break the format, but in the end, Storm fell completely flat and was not just not great, but it was downright awful at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan. So let's move forward from the bad news to the fun news. So we're going to wrap up our discussion today by talking about my 3 favorite decks. And I'm not going to go over Hollow One again, even though I love that deck. That was probably my favorite deck. So we're going to talk about 3 under the radar spicy decks that I just really, really like to wrap things up. So coming in at number 3 on our spiciest deck list, and I hate that I'm even showing this deck off because it is miserable to play against, but we have Ironworks Combo, basically the new updated version of Eggs. So if you like puzzly combo decks that can sometimes just Emrakul your opponent on turn 3 and win the game by making tons of mana with Carrot Clan Ironworks, this is a pretty interesting option. So if you want to goldfish your way to some wins with something a little bit different, give it a shot. You probably will have some fun with it, although your opponents most definitely will not. Coming in at number 2 on our spiciest deck list, we have an old favorite. We actually had an instant deck tech on a very similar deck a while ago, and that is White-Black Zombie Copter. So, Smuggler's Copter, just so underrated in the format. You get tons of recursive 1-drops in Gravecrawler and Dreadwander, and the free blood gas from the graveyard to just keep coming back over and over and over again, so you can discard them to Liliana's and Smuggler's Copters to generate card advantage and eventually overwhelm your opponent with a bunch of random 1-mana zombies. So a really cool, recursive, hard to deal with permanently, somewhat aggressive list showing up at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan. Finally, coming in at number 1 on our list, we have Blue-Red Kiln Feed. So if you remember, way back at the beginning of Budget Magic, years ago, we played a deck deck called Blistering Rage, and Blue-Red Kiln Fiend is basically the Pro Tour ready version of it. The idea of the deck is you get down a Swift Spear on turn 1 or a Kiln Fiend on turn 2, and then hopefully, with a combination of mutagenic growths to pump your creatures, Manamorphoses for free prowess triggers, and then finally Temur Battle Rage for double strike and trample, you close out the game maybe as soon as turn 2 or turn 3 depending on your draw. Plus you got Thing in the Ice as your backup plan, so worst case you play that, you bounce all your opponent's stuff and win that way. So really cool to see the aggressive spell slinging combo-ish deck Blue-Red Kiln Fiend performing really well on the Pro Tour stage. Anyway, I think that brings us to the end of our Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan wrap-up. So we talked about the best decks, we talked about the worst decks, the most fun decks, we talked about the format in general. So what do you think? Did you watch the Pro Tour? What's your feelings on the Modern format coming out of it? What deck are you most excited to pick up? Is the Modern Pro Tour worth keeping around? Are you hoping for another one on the schedule next year? How about the bannings? Are you happy with the format as it is? Do you think anything should be banned or unbanned? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you want a fuller breakdown of all the stuff we're talking about, make sure to follow the link in the description over to the Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan by the Numbers article on the MTG Goldfish site. You can see a ton of deck lists. We have all the deck lists posted over on the site with a breakdown of all the best performing archetypes, a bunch of thoughts, so keep an eye out on that if you're interested. Again, thank you so much for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.